Okay, so you want to own a hardware store. You have walked into one before, maybe hundreds of times. The floors creak, the air smells like sawdust and paint thinner, and something metallic you never figure out. One wall is covered floor to ceiling in tiny drawers, each one holding a different size of screw or bolt or washer. Another wall is lined with hammers, pliers, tape measures, and a few power tools still in their packaging. Behind the counter, there is a person in an apron who has worked here longer than most of the houses on the block. They know what you need before you finish describing the problem. That is the dream. You are the person in the neighborhood who knows how everything works. When someone's pipe bursts at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, they do not call a plumber. They call you. Or they just walk in. The American home improvement retail market does over $600 billion a year in product sales alone. That sounds massive until you realize who owns most of it. Home Depot alone does about $165 billion in annual revenue across 2,300 warehouse-sized stores. Lowe's does another $86 billion. Amazon has quietly captured a growing share of the market and is not slowing down. Between those three, more than half the industry belongs to companies that can buy 1 million hammers at a time. Your store has 4,000 square feet of shelf space and a guy named Dave who has been cutting keys since 1997. So how does a store like yours survive against a warehouse 10 times its size that sells the same DeWalt drill for $15 less? Before we answer that, you need to understand that not all hardware stores are the same business. There are at least 4 different ways to run one, and they are not all doing the same thing. The first and most common is the co-op affiliate. Ace Hardware, Do It Best, True Value. These are not franchises in the traditional sense. They are retailer-owned cooperatives. You own and operate your store independently, but you buy through the co-op's distribution network, use their brand, and benefit from their national marketing. In exchange, you pay membership fees, follow certain stocking guidelines, and agree to their pricing structures on promoted items. The second model is the fully independent store. No brand on the sign, no corporate catalog to order from. You find your own suppliers, negotiate your own prices, and stock whatever you think will sell. Maximum freedom, but zero buying power. The third is the niche specialist, a store that does one thing deeply. Imagine a shop with nothing but 40,000 different fasteners in labeled drawers, and a guy behind the counter who can identify a thread pitch just by looking at it. Small footprint, narrow inventory, and a reputation so specific that contractors drive past 3 Home Depots to get to you. The fourth is the pro-focused supply house. No retail signage, no weekend browsers, just a counter, a warehouse out back, and contractors with accounts placing bulk orders before 7 in the morning. Relationship-driven, high volume, but thinner margins because professional buyers negotiate everything. Of these 4, co-op is the one most people end up choosing if they are getting into this today. It gives you the scale advantages of a national brand without requiring you to be one. Now, startup costs. If you are buying an existing small hardware store from a retiring owner, you can get in for somewhere between $80,000 and $150,000. That covers the inventory on the shelves, the fixtures, the existing customer relationships, and whatever goodwill the name carries in the neighborhood. If you are opening a new store under a co-op brand like Ace, the number jumps to $300,000 to $500,000. That includes the membership buy-in, store build-out, your first full inventory order, point-of-sale systems, signage, and an opening marketing budget. If you are building from scratch in a new location with a larger footprint, you are looking at over $600,000 and potentially well above $1 million, depending on the market. Here is the cost that surprises everyone: inventory. A typical independent hardware store carries more than 30,000 individual SKUs on its shelves at any given time. Tens of thousands of screws, hundreds of types of adhesive, dozens of hammers, wrenches, and drill bits in every size the industry has ever standardized. Most of those items sell 1 or 2 units per week. Some sit on the shelf for months before anyone asks for them. Your money is locked inside tens of thousands of small metal objects that barely move. Inventory in this business is not an asset. It is cash sitting on a shelf pretending to be a product. Every item on that wall is money that cannot do anything else until someone walks in with the exact problem it solves. Here is where we get into what actually makes this business work and why the answer has nothing to do with what is sitting on the shelves. Let me walk you through what happens when one customer walks in. Saturday morning, a homeowner comes through the door. His kitchen faucet has been dripping for 3 weeks. His wife mentioned it again this morning. He has watched 2 YouTube videos about fixing it and is now more confused than when he started. He walks to the plumbing aisle and stares at a wall of parts that all look identical. Brass fittings, rubber washers, cartridges in plastic packaging with model numbers that mean nothing to him. He picks up something that looks approximately right, puts it back, picks up another one. He is about to give up and call a plumber. A store employee walks over. In this business, this person is not a cashier. They are the store's most valuable asset. They ask 3 questions. What brand is your faucet? How old is it? Single handle or double? The customer does not know the brand but describes the shape. The employee nods. 60 seconds later, they have identified the exact cartridge model, walked the customer to the correct bin on the 3rd row from the bottom, and handed him a $4.50 O-ring that will stop the drip tonight. That O-ring made the store about 40 cents in profit. If that were the end of the transaction, this business model would collapse. A store cannot survive on 40-cent margins. But watch what happens in the next 90 seconds. This is where you see how this business actually works. The employee says, "How old did you say that faucet was?" If it is over 10 years, the cartridge itself is probably starting to wear. You can replace just the O-ring today, but you might be back in a month for the full cartridge. Here is an $18 rebuild kit that does the whole valve at once. It will save you a second trip and about an hour of your Saturday. The customer looks at the kit. $18 to avoid coming back. He adds it to the basket. The employee continues. Do you have a basin wrench at home? You will need one to get under the sink and reach the mounting nuts. Most people do not own one. They try to use pliers, strip the nut, and then the $15 repair turns into a $200 plumber visit. A basin wrench is $15. The customer adds it. On the way to the register, they pass the paint aisle. The customer remembers that the garage door has been peeling since last fall. A $45 can of exterior latex and an $8 angled brush go into the basket. He grabs a roll of painter's tape for $6 because the employee mentioned that the brand works better on weathered wood. The $4.50 O-ring just became a $96.50 ticket, and none of it required a coupon, a sale sign, a pop-up ad, or a promotional email. It required one thing: a person who knew what questions to ask and what problems would follow the one the customer came in with. Here is the thing nobody expects. The hardware on the wall is not where the money lives. A $50 key blank cut in 12 seconds sold for $4. That $4 key took a flick of the wrist. The 50-pound box of nails behind it took a factory, a shipping container, 3 months on a shelf, and it still earns the store less profit. The real product this store sells is not metal, wood, or paint. It is knowing the answer right when someone needs it, and that costs the store almost nothing to provide. But the key is just the beginning. Walk around the store, and you start to see where the real money hides. Services are the first and most profitable layer. Key cutting is the purest example. The blank costs roughly 50 cents. The machine has been paid off for years. The labor takes under a minute. The customer pays $3 to $5. That is a margin above 500% on a transaction that carries no inventory risk and occupies no shelf space. Paint mixing is the same story. The tinting machine is a one-time capital investment. Every custom color match is almost pure service margin. Glass cutting, pipe threading, screen repair, blade sharpening, small engine servicing. These all share the same trait. They turn the store from a place that sells objects into a place that solves problems. And the margin on solving a problem is always higher than the margin on selling a thing. Then there are consumables. A hammer sits on the wall with a 25% margin and sells once. The box of nails the customer uses with that hammer carries a 55% margin and gets replaced every few weeks. Drill bits wear down. Sandpaper gets used up. Caulk tubes empty. Tape rolls run out. These are the items that bring people back, and they carry margins that the tools themselves never will. Then there is the part most people do not even know about. Ace Hardware, as a retailer-owned cooperative, distributes a portion of its annual profits back to member store owners as a patronage dividend. You are not just running a retail store. You are a shareholder in a buying network that does billions in volume. In a strong year, this dividend can add $40,000 to $70,000 to the owner's bottom line, depending on how much they purchase through the network. Money that never shows up on the store's books, but goes straight into the owner's pocket. And finally, there is seasonal rotation. Lawn and garden in spring, grills and outdoor living in summer, heating equipment and weatherproofing in fall, snow removal and ice melt in winter. These categories carry margins often double what everyday fasteners and hand tools produce. And they create a natural traffic rhythm that pulls customers back in on a predictable cycle, even if nothing in their house is broken. Now, the cost structure that all of this revenue has to support. Inventory is the largest capital commitment, typically 40% to 50% of total capital tied up in the business. Labor is the second biggest line item. A typical store runs with 2 to 3 full-time employees plus part-time seasonal help during spring and summer surges. Rent is third. Let us run through the monthly math on a store doing $150,000 in monthly revenue. Cost of goods sold at roughly 58% leaves about $63,000 in gross profit. Employee wages and benefits, $18,000. Rent on 4,000 square feet in a suburban strip location, about $5,000. Utilities, insurance, and general liability, $2,800. Advertising, mostly local digital and direct mail, $2,000. POS software, accounting, and phone lines, $800. Delivery vehicle maintenance and fuel, $600. Miscellaneous, including damaged goods, warranty returns, and store maintenance, $1,200. Total monthly operating expense runs about $30,400. That leaves roughly $32,600 in monthly operating profit before the owner takes a draw. Sounds reasonable until you factor in the quiet killer, shrinkage. Small, high-value items like premium drill bits, multi-tools, and battery packs are easy to pocket and hard to notice missing from a wall of thousands of parts. Industry-wide retail shrinkage averages about 1.6% of revenue, but hardware stores tend to run higher because of all the small, expensive items that fit in a pocket. On a store doing $1.8 million a year, even at the low end, that is over $30,000 worth of product walking out the door without being paid for. That alone wipes out nearly a full month of what would have been profit. There is also a regulatory dimension most owners do not think about until it arrives. If a power tool or electrical product you sold gets recalled by the CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, you have a legal obligation to notify every customer who purchased that item and process the return or replacement. Failure to comply can result in penalties that start at tens of thousands per violation and escalate quickly. And if you sell paint or surface coatings to anyone renovating a home built before 1978, the EPA's RRP rule requires you to provide a specific lead safety information pamphlet at the point of sale. Skip that step, and fines can reach nearly $50,000 per violation per day as of 2025. These are not daily concerns, but when they hit, one fine can wipe out an entire year of profit. But none of this is the real problem. The real problems come from outside the building. The first is Home Depot. And it is not simply that they sell things cheaper. Nearly half of Home Depot's $165 billion in revenue comes from professional contractors. They have dedicated pro service desks, credit accounts with volume-based pricing tiers, job site delivery fleets, and digital order management tools designed specifically for builders running multiple projects. They are not just competing for your weekend homeowner. They are methodically locking up the contractor relationships that represent your most valuable, most repeatable revenue stream. Every contractor they capture is one who used to walk into your store 3 times a week. The second is Amazon. Your customer is standing in your aisle holding a $40 cordless drill and checking the price on their phone. Same brand, same model. $32 with free next-day delivery. Your store just became a showroom for someone else's transaction. The customer puts the drill back on your shelf, walks out, and taps a button in their car. Unlike Home Depot, Amazon does not need a building, a parking lot, or a single employee in your zip code to take that sale from you. The third is tariffs. In 2025 and 2026, import duties on Chinese manufactured goods hit 25 to 50% across dozens of hardware categories: fasteners, hand tools, lighting fixtures, small electrical components, and garden equipment. Home Depot mitigates this with a sourcing network that spans more than 40 countries and a logistics operation that can shift production between continents in weeks. Your store absorbs the full hit. Your wholesale cost rises. But raising your retail price is not a real option when the customer can drive to a big box store where the same item still costs less because they sourced it from Vietnam 6 months before the tariff hit. And then there is the case that proves none of this is hypothetical. True Value, one of the most recognized hardware brands in American history, a retailer-owned cooperative founded in 1948. At its peak, more than 6,000 member stores nationwide, a name that appeared on storefronts in nearly every small town in the country. In October 2024, True Value filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. 2 months later, the company was acquired by its rival cooperative, Do It Best, for $153 million. To put that number in context, that is less revenue than a single busy Home Depot location generates in 1 year. A national brand built over 76 years, sold for the price of one store's annual receipts. During the exact same period, Ace Hardware added 106 net new domestic stores and reported growth across all major categories. Same industry, same cooperative structure. One expanded while the other collapsed. The difference was not the market. The difference was adaptation. Ace had invested heavily in digital infrastructure, buy online, pick up in store capability, inventory synchronization across its network, and aggressive programs to capture professional contractor business. True Value had not matched that pace. By the time the gap became obvious, it was too late to close. And True Value is not even the only cautionary tale. In 2013, Lowe's acquired Orchard Supply Hardware out of bankruptcy, a California chain that had been serving customers for over 80 years. Lowe's operated it for 5 years. Then, in 2018, announced it would shut down every single location. All 99 stores closed. Thousands of jobs gone. The lesson was not about the economy. It was about what happens when a big box company buys a neighborhood brand and tries to run it like a warehouse. The culture that made Orchard Supply valuable to its customers was the first thing the new owner eliminated. In a good year, everything aligns. A new housing development brings contractor traffic to your area. Spring hits warm and early, sending lawn and garden sales ahead of projection. Your team is performing well, attaching services and accessories to more than 60% of all transactions. A store doing $1.8 million in annual revenue at a 42% gross margin and 12% net margin produces about $216,000 in pre-tax profit. The owner draws a salary of around $80,000 throughout the year. On top of that, the co-op patronage dividend kicks in another $50,000 to $60,000 depending on purchase volume. Total take-home lands somewhere around $130,000 to $150,000. That is a genuinely comfortable living from a business that most people assume cannot compete in the modern retail landscape. In a bad year, the math turns quietly. Interest rates rise. Homeowners postpone renovation projects. Tariffs push your wholesale costs up 15%, but you absorb most of it because raising prices means losing traffic to the big box 3 miles away. A competitor opens nearby, fragmenting your customer base. Revenue drops to $1.3 million. Gross margin compresses to 37% as you run more promotions to hold foot traffic. Net margin slides to about 5%. Operating profit falls to $65,000. The owner still draws a salary, but it now takes most of that $65,000 just to cover it. Total take-home drops to somewhere around $55,000 to $70,000, and that includes months where nothing went into savings. Nobody went bankrupt. Nobody closed. But 3 ordinary things happened at the same time. Rates moved. Costs rose. Competition increased. Each one survivable alone. Together, they cut the owner's income nearly in half. The thing that breaks this business is never one big disaster. It is 3 small problems showing up in the same year. So what does a hardware store owner actually take home? For a single-location co-op owner who works the floor and manages the books, the typical range is $80,000 to $150,000 a year. That includes salary, retained earnings, and cooperative dividends. An owner who has scaled to 2 or 3 locations with a manager running each one can push toward $250,000, but they are carrying significantly more inventory risk, additional lease obligations, and the headache of managing multiple stores. The niche specialist, the person running a focused fastener shop or paint store with minimal staff and tight inventory, typically nets $60,000 to $100,000. Lowest overhead, lowest ceiling, but also the lowest exposure to the competitive forces that threaten larger, more generalized operations. The owners who thrive in this business over the long term share a few common traits. They lock in professional contractors with monthly credit accounts and dedicated ordering systems, converting one-time buyers into regulars who show up every week. They treat services as profit centers rather than customer conveniences, investing in equipment for key cutting, paint mixing, blade sharpening, and screen repair because the margins on labor and expertise blow away the margins on any product sitting on a shelf. They build the kind of neighborhood knowledge that works like a wall around their business. Home Depot can match your price on a box of deck screws. It cannot match your ability to remember that the customer standing in front of you replaced their deck boards 2 years ago with a composite that requires a specific type of screw head to avoid splitting. That kind of memory is the one thing no algorithm and no delivery drone can copy. And the smartest operators in this business own the building underneath the store, letting the hardware operation pay down a property that goes up in value whether the retail side has a good year or not. A hardware store is not a store that sells hardware to crowds. It is a store that sells answers to one person at a time. That is what Home Depot cannot fit inside a warehouse, and what Amazon cannot put inside a box.